happy to say Dr. Monroe is my guest tonight. Welcome, sir. It's a pleasure. The impact that you left on me in '89 is still with me.
Wow.
When you talked about the seed. I could hardly understand what you said then because I was about 15 or so. But over the years, I've grown to understand and admire the work that you've been doing. Very happy to have you in the studio tonight. This is a program that we've been doing for 10 years, and we believe that we are the leading current affairs talk show in Ghana, and we believe that when people outside Ghana see us, they like our show. We are very happy that you're here. Tonight we'll be talking about leadership, we'll be talking about potential, and we'll be talking about the reason why you are here. So just give us a message to your viewers, and then we will take a break. We'll come back. I have a lot of questions for you, Dr. Monroe. So what message do you have?
Well, first of all, it's great to be back in Ghana. I've not been here for about almost 15 years. And listening to the words of my own song inspires me, listening to you say it. And that song was written because of my conviction that the future belongs to the emerging third world nations, and that there are only 3 worlds on planet Earth. It's the first world, old Europe, the second world, the industrial states, and the third world is all that God has left, is us who are the emerging countries. And so I think it's important for us to get prepared to take leadership in every area of life, and therefore the emerging economies, the emerging political entities that are coming up, we need to be prepared effectively for leading the world into the next 40, 50 years of leadership. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to a great time.
Maybe sometime in the program later tonight you give us an a cappella rendition of that song if you don't mind. But tell us, Mr. Monroe, people send me an email to ask me, what are you? Are you a pastor? Are you a motivational speaker? Are you a politician? What are you?
I am all things to all men depending on what they need. So I'm a businessman. I have 5 companies. I am a motivational speaker. I train corporate executives. I'm also a leadership consultant. I work with governments. I also founded one of the largest churches in the Caribbean. I'm also an advisor to governments. 17 governments are on my list that I am retained by. And I also work with developing university professors and dealing with lecturing in companies and universities. And so I am really a human developer. I develop people. And I address all the different aspects of human life. A human is a triunity. It's a physical being that needs to be developed. It's an emotional and psychological being that needs to be trained. And it's a spiritual being that needs to be inspired. So depending on the need that a person has, I address that specific need. So I have no title. I simply have functions. And I think one of the greatest statements I ever heard in life was written by the first century leader. He said, I become all things to all men, that I may win some of them. And that's what I do. I become all things to all men.
Yes, the biblical Paul.
That's correct.
This year in Ghana, we are choosing leaders. At the end of the year, we're going to go to elections. There'll be a ballot box that we're going to choose some leaders. So I'd like to start with you tonight. Tell us, and I see that it's in your latest book, which is The Spirit of Leadership, the 10 attitudes of a leader. Can you run us through that?
Ah, boy. You know, leadership is a very complicated thing. And the reason why we are constantly going through election periods is because we as nations, we hope that the next government will be better than the one before that. And that's why we keep going through this process of electing governments. But I do want to say that one of the poorest forms of leadership development is through elections.
It's a poor form of leadership development?
Absolutely. Because elections can actually vote a person into power who's not trained to be a leader. Because you win an election doesn't mean you are a leader. You can actually elect a fool if he got enough votes. So leadership is not the same as winning an election. The question is, are the people that we are about to put in charge of our future and in charge of our lives, are they qualified, competent, trained, and prepared to lead us effectively to the goals and the vision that we set for ourselves as a country? And so I think it's a very challenging thing. In this particular book, The Spirit of Leadership, I deal with some of the principles and attitudes that a leader must cultivate to be effective. Leadership is, like as I said, is very complicated because it is not a gift; it is a result. Some of the attitudes of leadership, the ones I talk about, is first of all, a leader must be someone who has a clear purpose for their lives, and they must develop a passion for their lives. Therefore, leadership is first personal, then it's public. And so purpose has to do with having a sense of significance, a sense of personal responsibility to humanity. A person with a purpose is someone who discovered that they were born for a reason, not just to make a living. Most of the people that we have in leadership, some of them are wonderful people, but many of them are also defective in the sense that they're more concerned about power than they are about empowering people. And so when you have a sense of purpose, you don't live for yourself anymore. You live for humanity. Some of the greatest leaders that I think I've ever met, I got to meet Mr. Nelson Mandela a number of times, and one of the things that struck me is he never lived for himself. He lived for the people. He told me one time, he said, I discovered that even though I was a trained lawyer, it wasn't law that I was interested in. I was concerned about seeing my people free from oppression. And he said this, he said, I felt a personal obligation to the people of South Africa to set them free. That's called purpose. Purpose is when you find a reason for your existence, not just finding a career to make money. So leadership begins with someone who feels and discovers that they were born to do something to help humanity. Then the second one, of course, is passion. If you find a leader with passion, you don't need to pay them any money. Passion is a product of purpose. When you discover that you were born to do something, then that gives you a passion to pursue it. It is the passion that inspires other people to follow you. So true leaders do not seek followers. True leaders inspire others to follow them by their own willingness to die for what they believe. Great leaders like Nelson Mandela and people like Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, etc. These are people who, they weren't living to make a living. They were actually living to make a difference. They felt that they were born to do something to help humanity. These are the leaders that we need today, people with purpose and passion. And then the third attitude I talk about in the book is one that we forget about, and that is initiative. Leaders are people who don't wait for things to change. They decide, I'm going to become the change in the world that I want to see. They don't wait around to be told what to do. If they see something wrong, they volunteer to fix it. So leaders are those who don't wait for instructions. They respond to needs. They initiate change. And this is what makes a leader different from a follower. Followers, they kind of wait for people to tell them what to do. A leader looks at the environment, see what needs to be done, and then steps out and initiate the change necessary. The fourth attitude of a leader we talk about in the book is priorities. Leaders do not do everything. They do the right thing. You know, the difference between a manager and a leader is very, very interesting. A manager tries to do things right. A leader tries to do the right thing. Because you can be busy on the wrong thing and be a failure. So leaders try to find out what is the right thing to do. What is right? What is that which is just? And then they make that a priority. They also try to stay with their priorities. Leaders are also goal-oriented. Leaders don't just excite themselves about busyness.
Okay. Later tonight, I'll be asking you about some leaders. I'll throw some names to you, and you tell me whether you think that they have been great leaders or that they've not been so great leaders. And I'll throw names of contemporary people also.
Sure.
I'll be asking you a few questions. I'd like to share the questions with my viewers because I'd like them to send me an email and tell me whether they have some more questions for you. And you can send the email to goodeveningghana@gmail.com. I'll be asking you why are some countries rich and others poor. I'll be asking you whether everyone is made to be successful. I'll ask also, what is the new world order, whether you know about something like that. I'll ask you, can Africa really succeed in the future? You talked about the emerging nations and the opportunity for them. I'll ask you, why are you convinced that the black person is not inferior? And then I'll ask you, what is the role of the gospel of Jesus Christ in the success equation of individuals and companies? Then we talk about mentoring and succession, which you mentioned today. And for viewers, Dr. Myles Monroe is here in Ghana, and on Friday and Saturday he has a 2-day leadership mentoring event that will challenge, inspire and transform you. Later on in the program, I'll give you the details of the venues and I'll give you the details of how you can participate. So call your friend to tell his friend that Myles Monroe is on Good Evening Ghana. I'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Thank you very much for your time. Dr. Myles Monroe is still here, so I'll run through the questions that I had advertised, and I'm expecting your emails soon. mentoring and succession as a weak component in Africa's leadership development. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I believe that the greatest tragedy of leadership is the fact that we don't produce leaders after ourselves. And if you study the history of most of our developing countries and emerging nations, we really don't do a good job in mentoring our successors. And so most of the time, whenever there's a leadership change, it usually comes either by conflict or death or a coup or a leadership change that comes with great tension and fighting, infighting. And this is sad. I believe that we need to become matured enough in our leadership that we can begin to mentor our replacement. I always tell people that leadership is measured by who you produced, not what you built. And most of the time, we measure these by how many roads they built, how many buildings they built, and these can be destroyed by one earthquake. But you know that the greatest leadership in the world are those leaders who build people. And most of the time, we are afraid to mentor because we are so insecure that we don't want anyone to take our place. As a matter of fact, the concept that has been pervasive in emerging third world countries is leaders want to be leaders for life. That's a sign of insecurity. Great leaders work themselves out of a job. In other words, leadership is measured by how quickly you can train someone to take your place so you can move on to the next level. This is why we need to focus then on developing people who would want to mentor others to take their place. Mentoring takes a lot of confidence. If I feel secure in myself, I'm not afraid of developing my replacement. And so leadership has more to do with producing leaders than it is to maintaining a position. Succession is a different issue. If you are a successful mentor, then you will also secure a successful succession. Succession is the only word in the dictionary that has success in it. Which means that success in leadership is successful succession. Moving on, transferring power, transferring information, transferring knowledge. Success without a successor is failure. No matter how great a leader was, if he does not successfully produce a successor, much of what he created could die with him. I always ask this question: if what you know and what you've done died with you, then you are a failure. So leadership is being able to transfer to the next generation all that you've accomplished, all that you've accumulated. This is success. The greatest example of leadership on earth in history is that young Jewish man named Jesus Christ. He left the earth at age 33 and a half years old. But he didn't leave his organization just to wander. He specifically chose a successor, whose name we know today as Peter. And he did that while he was alive. Most of us, we see fighting when someone dies for position. Great leaders mentor their replacement. And so I want to encourage all the leaders in our country, in Ghana, which is a great, wonderful nation, and all of our nations in Africa, to begin to develop the kind of maturity, whether you are a manager in a position, a supervisor, the president of a company, the pastor of a church, or the president of a country. You need to choose 3 or 4 people around you and begin to train them and teach them and show them.
So you think
Africa,
political Africa has a leadership crisis? You mentioned Nelson Mandela, but you've not mentioned anyone else.
You know, Nelson Mandela to me is one of the greatest examples of a successful successor process. Nelson Mandela was president for 1 term and decided to turn it over to someone he mentored, Mr. Mbeki. That's great leadership. True leaders do not wait to be moved. They move. True leaders don't wait to be told to get out. They walk out. This is why Nelson Mandela will go down history as one of the greatest leaders of all time, because he's one of the few African leaders who actually obtained power, secured power, and then got rid of it and gave it to another young man. He will be honored for all of his life, and his legacy shall live on. So I want to encourage leaders today, whether you are a politician or a business leader or a pastor or a supervisor, ask yourself, who are you training to take your place? Who are you developing to become better than yourself?
What you're saying is going to stir some controversy, and it's already begun, because there's a big comparison in Africa among Nelson Mandela and Kwame Nkrumah. And Nkrumah was voted as the African of the century, but he's a leader who was driven out in very bizarre circumstances. What do you have to say about that band called Nkrumah?
Well, I think based on the principle that I have submitted to you, I think the viewers must make their own decision. I cannot pass judgment, but I think great leadership is measured by your capacity to leave power, not to be driven out of power. It's easy to obtain power. It's difficult to give it up. And matured, secure leaders find pleasure in transferring power. So leadership is not about obtaining power. It's about empowering others to become successful.
There's a question here from somebody called Eugene Boabe. He says that, do you think that the late big brother Gaddafi was a great leader? Please let Dr. Monroe answer this question. Do you have an answer for that question?
I think based on my comments about succession, Mr. Gaddafi may not be considered to be a successful leader. He had to be driven from power. And by the way, it is more important to know when it's time to leave than it is to try and maintain power. Let's put it another way. It is better to leave too early than to stay too late. Most leaders stay too late. Never allow people to get tired of you. Make them want you to come back. This is great leadership. South Africa, again, is a great example. The South Africans love Mr. Mandela, and yet he refused to come back because he finished his purpose. His purpose was, I have to set my people free from oppression. I was born to do it, and that's what he did. I think another example is the great leader Moses. Moses was instructed by the Creator to bring the people out of Egypt. The Creator never told him to take him into the Promised Land. Some leaders want to do both. Sometimes you got to know, what is my assignment? Mr. Mandela's assignment was very clear, to deliver the people from the oppression of apartheid. Once he did that, he knew, I've completed my assignment. I'm going to transfer this to the next generation. You know, when Moses got the people out of Egypt, he knew, I'm finished. Matter of fact, he was tempted to want to go over. And we know the story. God interrupted him personally and said, look, there's another young man named Joshua. And he told Moses to actually make the transition to Joshua publicly, so that everyone will know who the next generation of leadership is supposed to be. I have an organization that's 30 years old. I have made myself unnecessary. I have trained my replacement. So today I have a multi-million-dollar organization, a multi-million-dollar structure, and I don't run it. I've turned it over to the next generation already, and I'm going on to other things. If you hold people down and keep people down, the problem is you got to stay with them to keep them down.
Ike says that, Dr. Monroe, your book, The Purpose of Prayer, you have a book like that?
Yes.
Changed the way I saw prayer and many other things. I would have been the first to buy the ticket if I could afford just to listen to the words of wisdom. Ghana and our generation is truly blessed, he says, to have great inspired leaders like you, Dr. Monroe.
Thank you.
Another one says, does location have any bearing on the kind of leaders that we have? That's from Sylvester Mensah. Location, does it have a bearing on the leaders that we have?
I assume we're talking about where someone was born.
Yes.
The answer is no. I was born in a family of 11 children. I am number 6. I was born living in a wooden house on 4 big rocks with 2 bedrooms. One for my mother, one for my father. So my 7 sisters slept in one bedroom.
Your mother and your father didn't share a bedroom?
I'm telling you now, 1 bedroom was for my mother and father.
Okay.
The other one was for my 7 sisters.
Okay.
So the 4 brothers slept on the floor. I remember sleeping on the floor with roaches and rats and ants and mosquitoes all night. I remember laying in the night on the floor, looking up at the ceiling, and I could see the stars through the roof. That's where I was born. Today, I fly my own Learjet. You know, I have multi-million-dollar organizations. How did I move from sleeping on the floor with roaches and rats to affecting nations around the world? Something happened to my mentality. So it doesn't matter where you were born. It's whether you get the right input. And that's why we're having these seminars this week. To, you know, your external life should not create your internal condition. You need to choose what you learn. And that's what happened to me. I got information from sources outside my environment, bigger than my environment, and it changed my mentality. So that's how we must say that, you know, Jesus Christ was born in a cave, but he ended up on a throne. I was born on the floor, and I ended up affecting nations. So I say to everyone watching this program tonight, that where you was born has nothing to do with where you are going to die. You choose between death and life. What happens to your life? And I hope that that begins right now.
Boama says that, I love you, Dr. Monroe. I want to have a very long life so that you can keep on transferring the kingdom message. I want you to have a very long life. Why is leadership so hard to live? I think Dr. Monroe has been talking about that. Adam says, what should I do to inherit leadership? Or is there any meditation to leadership? Paul Entry says, add Brian Tracy to your list of great men and leaders that you have and ask Dr. Monroe about him. Perhaps he should touch on African ingenuity, and I suggest you recommend one of your outfit for him. Well, somebody likes what I'm wearing and he thinks I should recommend it for you. Hi, Paul. Big thanks for your guest. Please, some of us can't make it for the lecture. The amount is too much. Is there any means to assist, or will CDs be out? Where will we get some of his books to buy? Welcome to Ghana, Dr. Myles Monroe. These are questions that I'll note down, great. And some of the organizers are here. They'll answer the question about where you can get the books to buy and whether there'll be CDs out. What do you have to say about the economic gap between the Western countries and Africa? Secondly, why most Western countries provide the means to the ousting of some of the outstanding leaders in Africa? May we continue to fetch a clean and pure water from your well of knowledge. Dr. Monroe, God bless you, it says.
Wow.
Leadership in the home is increasingly becoming challenging, where even Christian men abandon their children with no father figure to mentor them. How do we address such challenges of women mentoring men? That's from Della. I have so many emails to
Great question, I'm telling you. I just had to comment on the one that they talk about materials. I'm very pleased to announce tonight that we have shipped up to Ghana from our South African office a lot of books and CDs and DVDs that are going to be available to all those who are going to attend the event, and even beyond that. So if you don't get a chance to see me personally and to be with me, we will definitely have our materials available for you. Concerning the comment about leadership and the fact that we actually destroy our leaders, one of the greatest products, or should I say the effects of colonialism, is that we have developed a spirit of intimidation and insecurity. Our insecurity is what causes us to destroy one another. And one of the effects of oppression is self-hatred. This is why we think that anything that is white or anything that is from Europe is better than that which is black or African. I think the oppression and the impact of imperialism for over 200 years on our mentality is still with us today. And this is why we destroy our own people. Some of the greatest leaders in history are right here in Africa, right here in Ghana. And one of the problems that we have, though, is that we find it hard to accept our own selves. And I'd like to encourage us here, even as we talk about leadership this week, to believe that leadership is present. There's a question there about whether leadership is a gift or whatever. Let me say this. Every human being was born to be a leader. Now, normally when I say that, people get nervous. But I am convinced, this is my philosophy, that every human being was born to be a leader, but not over people. Every human being was born to be a leader in an area of gifting. That gifting is what attracts people to that person, because when you serve your gift to the world, you become a leader. I look at you, for example. I walked in here, and in the first 5 minutes, my conclusion was made, and I told you, you're good at this. In other words, this is your gift. This gift is making room for you in the world. It is this gift that makes people turn on the TV every night to watch you. Why? You are serving your gift to the world. So every human being was born to be a leader. Most of them die as followers because we don't live in a culture that helps us to discover our own gift. Most of us actually are stuck in a career rather than a calling. We are more concerned about making money than making a difference. We've been trained and educated to get a job rather than start a business. So the whole culture of our community doesn't allow us to discover our gift. And this is why, to be a successful leader, you must step away from the norm, abandon the culture, walk away from tradition, and discover yourself. And then come back and change the tradition.
Step away from the norm and abandon your culture. That's going to be pretty difficult. So Dr. Monroe will tell us how you can do that. I'll be asking him whether, if you are born in a $60 billion economy like Ghana, on the same day that another person is born in a $400 billion economy elsewhere, whether the chances of succeeding are better for one than the other. And of course, we'll talk about the issue about the black person, whether it's inferior or not, and we'll talk about the details of the program. After the break, I'll be back with a continuation of the conversation with Dr. Myles Monroe. We'll take a break now. We'll be right back. Thank you very much for remaining with us, and all of you are watching. Excellent. I have the number for the event, and you can call and fix your ticket. The Honorable Isaac Osei, I have to say good evening to you. He's in Parliament for the Subin constituency. And Dr. Monroe, Isaac Osei is Ghana's former High Commissioner to London. He's watching this program, and he says he's enjoying what you're saying. He wants me to find out from you, or to inform you, that a president called Leopold Senghor, he was the president of Senegal. He brought Senegal out of independence. He said he's one example of one who gave away power to Abdou Diouf, and it's sad what his country has come to, as it has turned out today, and he wants me to inform you about it.
And you know, I think, again, those kinds of examples are fantastic and wonderful, and the question would be, was there a mentoring process in place? Even though a leader may be successful in achieving his goals, the most important goal of a leader should be to mentor his replacements. Even though you may, for example, start a great company and succeed as a great businessman, but if you died and the company fell apart because the one who inherited had no love for it, then all of your work went in vain. So it's not just what you achieve as a leader that makes you a successful leader, it's whether it is maintained and preserved after you. And that's why mentoring and succession is so important.
Well, this is an important question here. I don't know how important it will be to you. This from Dipti Cracker. He says, please ask Dr. Monroe what he knows about the Illuminati and the Freemason secret society groups. I don't know whether that's part of the focus of our discussion, but
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. One says, this is from Amponsa. He says, Dr. Monroe, good evening and happy to have you in Ghana. Is leadership a goal setting or what? Well, simple question. It says, is leadership a goal setting or what? Ofori says, welcome, Dr. Monroe. Indeed, you are a gift to the world. We love you so much. That's not a question. That's just saying hi to you, Dr. Monroe.
Well, greetings to all those who are sending in these.
It says, how effective perceptions, ask Dr. Monroe how effective perceptions is on leading a group of people, and whether the perception should reflect the leader or should be managed to send an appealing impression to followers. A complicated sort of question.
Let me try and answer it this way. I just put a piece of this. In this book that we have available, and I think this book will be available for all of you who are going to be...
Spirit of Leadership.
The show is called The Spirit of Leadership. In the first chapter, I talk about a simple scenario, and that is an army of sheep led by a lion will always defeat an army of lions if they are led by a sheep. Leadership, therefore, what it simply means, that leadership determines the quality of the followers. And this is why it's important for us to focus on leadership, whether it's business, a church, a community, or whatever. The leader determines what happens. For example, an effective leader can transform cowards into warriors. A successful leader can transform frightened people into bold soldiers. In other words, leadership determines the state and the quality of the followers. And that is why when a football team is not being successful, they don't fire the players.
They fire the coach.
They fire the coach.
And he wasn't playing.
And exactly. And what's amazing is another coach would come and take the same players, and the next season they become champions. Nothing was wrong with the players. It was the leader who could not bring out of the players their best potential. So if you are failing in an organization, don't blame the people in the company or the department. And even as a country, if the country is failing, you don't try to get rid of the population, you get rid of the leader. And so it's important for us then to be careful how we not judge an organization by the followers. Check the quality of leadership.
I'm very sure that my wife will like what you just said about the football coach, because she's been very worried about the Chelsea coach of late. I'm sure that she will be delighted to hear what you've just said. Okay, one person says that, this is Gabriel, it says, your definition of prayer is the best I could ever find. Mr. Ambassador from Bahamas, you are a lovely person.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Welcomes you every day. I seriously think all leaders in Africa should be schooled by your guest, because he is a bank of wisdom. And okay, and he says, and the name is Boadi, not Boabi. Sorry for the wrong pronunciation. I apologize. Eugene Boadi. Thank you very much for watching. Richard says, Paul, this shows how serious you are. Your ability to host a gentleman is an achievement. Please send out a letter to all the political parties who desire to rule to be at the lecture. I see that on the invitation. Some important politicians have been invited. Dr. Monroe, do you think that Ghana is blessed with good leaders or not? I want a straight answer. That's from Kofi Asari.
You know, it would be unfair for me to pass a judgment on the leadership in the country that I don't know. But I would say this, that you can also always measure good leadership by the state of the people and the state of the environment. And so I've been to Ghana before, 2 times. Coming back, I've seen some improvement already, just landing at the airport and driving through the streets. So obviously there's been some progress in this country. One of the things I'm concerned about here in Ghana is the fact that Ghana is becoming an industrial state in the sense that they are focusing on the oil and petroleum industry recently. That creates challenges and also opportunities, good and perhaps not so good. Because whenever there is a resource that can generate quick profits, you begin to see people fighting profits against principles. And that's when values and vision must become as important as pursuit of success. And so whenever there is a lot of resources coming forward, the temptation for corruption can be very high. And this is when we need strong, disciplined, principle-centered leadership, when you see wealth begins to increase. And I want to say, therefore, to all the leaders in this country, no matter what position you're in, whether you are a politician or a preacher or a supervisor, manager or an investor, whatever you are, remember that you must never violate the principle of values balanced with vision. Don't ever allow your passion to cause you to not have compassion. Don't pursue wealth at the expense of people's welfare. Everyone who sees wealth sometimes loses balance. So I say to every Ghanaian, you know, in the next few years, Ghana is perched to be one of the most successful countries in Africa because of the resources.
What will make that happen?
What happened?
What will make Ghana become one of the most successful countries in Africa, and what could stop that from happening? What is a critical factor?
Yes, you know, as I said, Ghana is filled with natural resources. Cocoa has been a major industry here, but now we're mixing that with oil, and oil is fast money, it's quick money. And the way the world is going now, with of course the Middle East being very unstable, any country that discovers oil will become very attractive to a lot of investors. That creates a prime environment for people to start compromising their principles. You know, for example, politicians and business people and those involved in government agencies will be tempted to be, you know, compromising their position.
You mean to take bribes?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we got to make sure that we have leadership that is trained with not just power but principles, not just vision but values.
Why is taking bribes wrong?
Well, because it undercuts the very value that stabilizes society. Let me give you an example. Any country that encourages a culture of corruption will never succeed, because investors will shy away from people who they believe do not have stable principles and values. The Bahamas...
People say Japan is very corrupt.
Well, that's why Japan is in a hellhole right now.
They are successful. They
No,
have a lot
they're
of
not.
money.
Are they?
They are.
No, they're jumping on...
GDP is huge.
You can't measure success by GDP. How about measure it by those CEOs who are jumping out of windows committing suicide? They don't make the top of the news. When they are discovered in their corruption, they kill themselves. In other words, there's a price to pay. There's no right way to do wrong.
If somebody says to you that Dr. Myles Monroe is talking, he doesn't understand the kind of poverty that we live here in Ghana. He says we shouldn't be after money. What should we be after? We need to eat. Why should we be looking for some principles? We are hungry. I was born somebody says I was born by a father of 6 children. I didn't go to school. My father didn't go to school. I lived in a hamlet. I'm so poor. And Myles Monroe is talking about principles.
Yes.
Are we going to eat principles?
In that sense, I am a Ghanaian. I was born on an island 7 miles wide, 20 miles long, in the lowest income area of that island called Bainstown. I was born in a family of 11 children. 1 mother, 1 father, in a 2-bedroom house. I slept on the floor with roaches and rats. I studied a book called the Bible. That Bible taught me principles at age 14. I keep those principles even today. That book of principles took me from the floor to flying in my own aircraft. It took me from being oppressed by the British, which I was. I was born in 1954. I remember when I could not go to the same school as the white students. I remember when I couldn't go eat at the same restaurant where the white people ate. I suffered that. I noticed that we couldn't even drive a certain part of our island because it was for white people only.
Drive?
Listen, you couldn't even drive there.
No, but this guy doesn't have a car. He doesn't know about a car.
Okay, when I say I couldn't walk there.
Okay.
All right? I had to walk to school five or 6 miles.
So what did you see in the Bible? We've all seen the Bible.
I discovered, first of all, that my value was not depending on other people's opinions. The British told us that we were half-breed monkeys. I was taught by a white teacher from Scotland who said to me years ago, you are retarded. You cannot learn. You are definitely half human. We were taught that 36 black kids in the class was told by a white teacher from Scotland that we were all half-breed humans.
As a matter of fact.
But that's what he said. That was my classroom.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You know that he said that to you. You remember that?
He said that to me.
Okay.
It almost destroyed me.
How old were you
I
then?
remember I was 14 years old. I remember going home to my mother crying, and I asked my mother, why are we black people monkeys and the white people are humans? My mother said, who told you that? I said, the teacher just told us that because all of our grades seemed to be wrong. I was getting F in the teacher's class. Later on, I didn't realize that the teacher couldn't teach. But at that time, I almost believed the teacher. But here's the end of the story. That's when I began to read this book called the Bible, because my mother told me, read the Bible and don't listen to your teacher. And here's a verse I'll never forget. The Bible said these words, whether you are a Muslim, a Buddhist, or Hindu, doesn't matter. The principle of this verse is important. It says, unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above more than I can ask, think, or imagine, according to the power that worketh within me. The key of that statement was this. The power for me to succeed was within me, not the teacher from Scotland. From that day I decided no teacher will teach me, because I don't trust any more teachers. So I memorized all the books of algebra, geometry, and history, and I went from an F student to an A student in 4 months. I taught myself. I graduated top of my school in that low-income area. I got a scholarship because of my grades to a white school. I went to the white school, became a top student in the white school. They didn't know what to do with me. And at that time, our country had just gone through a revolution, a very peaceful one. We went from white rule, 4% white rule, to black rule, 96% black people in my country. We finally got majority rule from the white people. And the first thing our black prime minister did was to send every student who was qualified for higher education. And I went off to school. And I came back with three bachelor's degrees, 1 master's degree, and 4 doctorate degrees. I'm not a dumb man. Do you know that a few years ago I went to England to do a leadership conference? I was in downtown London in a hotel. The place was packed. And I saw people lined up outside in the lobby. And I was there autographing my books. And there was a long line of people there. And I was just excited seeing all these people. And an old white man walked up to me. He was holding a cane. He was shaking. And he stood in front of me and he gave me 2 books. Both of my books. I autographed the first one. I said, thank you very much, sir, for coming to the seminar today. It was a leadership seminar. And then I took the second book, and the second book was all marked up and messy, and it was all stained. And I said, sir, you read my book. I love to see my books like this. He said, yes, your books changed my life. I said, thank you very much, and I signed it. And I gave him the 2 books. The old man just stood there looking at me. He wouldn't leave. There was a long line of people behind him. I said, sir, will you please allow the others to come? Thank you very much for coming to the conference. And he just stood there looking at me. I said, sir, is there anything the matter? And he said, I used to be in the Bahamas some years ago. I said, really? I said, where? In the Bahamas, we got 700 islands. He
700?
said, yes. So he said, I used to live in Nassau. I said, that's right, I'm from. I said, what did you do in the Bahamas? He said, I was a teacher. I said, you taught in the Bahamas? Yes, I did. I said, what school did you teach at? He said, C.H. Reeves High School. I said, that's the school I went to, sir. And then he looked at me, and he started to weep. I said, sir, you taught at my old school. He said, yes. You don't remember me, do you? I said, no, sir. He said, I'm Mr. Robertson. I'm the one who called you a monkey, remember?
You're serious?
I jumped up from around the table, ran around, I grabbed him, I hugged him. We wept in the middle of that hotel room. A black man and a white old man weeping on each other's shoulders. Everybody was in shock. And I heard him say to me, thank you for saving my life. I said, Mr. Robertson, you read my books. He said, I took a tube all the way from Scotland, made my way all the way to London. When I heard you were coming here, I wanted to meet you to tell you, forgive me for calling you a monkey. And I said, Mr. Robertson, you mean you actually read the books of a monkey? He laughed and we hugged and kissed. And I said to him, Mr. Robertson, may you never again evaluate another human who you don't know. Today, Mr. Robertson is now my student. He is over 79 years old. And I'm telling you, every student watching this program today, and everyone who's ever been told that you can't achieve anything, that inside of you is your future. God never placed your future outside of you. It's trapped inside of you. It's not ahead of you, it's in you. And so leadership is really greatness covered under small minds. We need to tap those minds and release people. And I pray that everyone watching this program will know that you shouldn't die as a follower. You should die influencing humanity.
You're watching Good Evening Ghana Live. This is Metro TV, and we are coming to you here, and we are also live across Africa on DSTV channel 136. Now, Ike says that all our MPs, government leaders, and President Myles should be marched to this conference. This is good use of our money rather than giving it to the likes of Woyome. Well, I knew that was going to come at some point. Man of God, you are welcome to Ghana, says Malcolm. I bought the Spirit of Leadership 2 years ago, and I have two questions. One, is it good and biblical for a believer in Christ to be a politician? And two, how do you think African leaders should bring their people from poverty in the face of these neo-colonialism and imperialism forces coming from the West? That's from Ferguson in Accra.
First of all, the first question, you know, one of the most important things about leadership is that leadership is inherent. It's in everyone, but it needs to be cultivated. And so if we're going to develop great leaders in our countries who are going to be effective, we're going to need to stop developing leaders by circumstances. If you study all the leaders in Africa for the last 100 years, all of them were products of oppression and struggle. They became great leaders out of a war or some tension to overthrow the imperial oppression. And we thank God for these leaders because they were important. They were part of the process. Today, we need leaders who are intentionally trained, who have been given opportunity to develop their skills in a formal way. And that's why we have developed a Leadership Training Institute for emerging countries. I am the chairman of the International Third World Leadership Association. And we are focused on third world countries because that's where I'm from. And we need to stop depending on leadership just because of popularity. We need leadership built on principles now, trained leaders. And if we're going to lead our people out of the shadow of imperial colonialism, we're going to have to first of all be free ourselves. And we do that again by cultivating our own selves, developing our own level of self-respect, self-security, self-worth, and that comes through, again, formal training. I wasn't born the way I am, but I got information that changed my thinking. Because once you change a man's mind about himself, you change a man's mind about his life. The great Solomon, King Solomon said, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So I think this is really key, and if we're going to see Ghana become the great nation I know it could become, we're going to have to continue to pursue more knowledge about leadership, because so go the leaders, so go the nation.
If you want to attend a seminar and listen to Dr. Monroe and perhaps have a one-on-one discussion with him, I said perhaps, it's not guaranteed. The number to call is 0540 827 508, and hopefully that will be put on the screen so you can copy it. 0540 827 508 is the number to call and talk to Dr. Monroe. Ivan says, God bless. We want to see Dr. Myles Monroe in the University of Ghana, Legon. Does he have any plan of that sort for Ghanaian students?
Am I scheduled to be in a university tomorrow?
Cape Coast, he says.
Cape Coast.
University of Cape Coast, yeah.
I'll be there tomorrow morning, I think it is, at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to seeing those students.
At the University of Cape Coast. The number again is 0540 827 508. Awuni says, you are doing a good job. May God bless you. Dr. Myles Monroe, I would love to listen to you over and over again. You are such an inspiration. He says, please, 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 can I have a ticket? Yes, you can. Call 0540 827 508. And Abdul says, do you believe that using our oil as a collateral for loans and grants will safeguard our economy? That's a very specific question. I don't know whether Dr. Monroe would like to address it. In that case, Ghana is failing as a country because the country is doused in corruption in gargantuan forms. So says Kofi Asari. Says, please ask Dr. Monroe, how can illiteracy affect a person who who dreams to be a leader? Illiteracy.
You know, this is a very important question. The lion is the greatest animal in the animal kingdom. The lion is the leader. And yet the mystery about the lion is this. The lion is not the tallest animal in the jungle. He's not the strongest, not the most powerful. He's not the most intelligent animal. He's not the most awesome. And yet the lion is the leader. The lion is, the elephant is 50 times much larger than the lion. A giraffe is almost 80% taller than a lion. A hippopotamus is 180% more heavy than a lion. A bull is 85% more powerful than a lion. And yet the lion eats all of them for lunch. So here's the mystery. That means the lion destroys every reason you gave for not being a leader. He's not the tallest, not the strongest, not the most intelligent, he's not the most powerful, but he's still the leader. Why? Because of one simple principle I researched, the lion's attitude. Most of the people who run the world dropped out of college. Some of the greatest leaders on this planet never finished school. So it's not your illiteracy or even the other things that we talk about, it's your attitude. If you believe you can achieve anything, that very belief will cause you to get education. Sometimes we wait for education to become important. No, if you are important, you'll get education. So I am willing to teach anybody about leadership if they're willing to learn. And if a person is so-called illiterate, whatever that means in your culture, give them to me for 3 weeks. I will produce for you a leader. Because if I can change their attitude, then nothing is impossible. The greatest leaders on earth, like Sir Winston Churchill, he couldn't speak. He was a stammerer. I remember they said that his greatest speech was given to a university graduation exercise. And he was so nervous, his speech lasted 1 sentence. Sir Winston Churchill simply said to the students, he walked up there, they said, with his cane, and he looked at the microphone, he took out a cigar, and he simply said, never, never quit. And he walked off and sat down. 50 years later, those students never forgot that speech. He will tell you he was not as literate as most of the members of Parliament. But his attitude helped them to win World War II. So it's important for you, if you've never been to school, create a school in your own house. You know, I read more today than I did when I was in school, because I must constantly keep educating myself. If no one taught you how to read, teach yourself. Abraham Lincoln, the greatest president of the United States, taught himself to read in a barrel. He used to work in a lawyer's office, sweeping off the dust of the books. One day, he just took a book without asking, went to the forest, and he said that he taught himself phonics. He learned to read by reading law books. And he did that for 3 years, just changing books. They didn't even miss the books. And they said one day, they were sitting in the law office discussing a case, and he was sweeping the floor. This Abraham Lincoln, just a little boy, dirty boy, sweeping the floor. His father died. He was working at age 11 to take care of his mom. He said he overheard them talking about a case. Guess what he said? He said, if you want to find the reasons for that case, look at volume 45 on shelf number 2. They looked around. He says, did you say something, young man? He said, yes. That case has a precedence in volume 45 on shelf number 2. They said, how did you know that? He said, I read the whole volume. They said, when did you read those books? He said, I want you to forgive me, sir, but I did take your books while I was working for you, and I taught myself how to read. They went and checked the volume, and the case was there, and they won the case. They turned him from a guy who swept the floor and made him an assistant in the office, and they taught him to be a lawyer. Days later, of course, the history is told. You know, he became a legal assistant in that office, from being a janitress to a legal assistant, because he taught himself to read. He became the president of the United States who set the black people free, and slavery was broken under him. I wonder if there's someone watching the program right now who think they are illiterate. You're not. You simply need opportunity. And what I'm saying is, don't wait for opportunity, create your own. And I'm willing to tell the person, whoever wrote that right now, I will give them a free copy of my book. If they were to contact you personally and give them your information, I would send them a copy of this book free. It's called Becoming a Leader. Anyone can do it. I'm going to leave this book for you, just for them. Whoever that is, you get their name. I'm going to send this to the person who they consider to be illiterate and let them create their own library in their house because they deserve an opportunity, just like Abraham Lincoln.
But at the base, thank you, I'll take it at the end of the program. At the heart of your discussion, Dr. Monroe, is the concept of Christianity. Somebody says, I'm a Muslim, I'm not a Christian. I believe in African traditional religion, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in Jesus Christ. Is that an important part of your message? Is your message limited to you and Jesus Christ?
One of the reasons why my books are in 112 countries and 82 languages, read by politicians, businessmen, pastors, Muslims, Hindus, is because I don't focus on religions. I focus on the human. My message is to humans. And every human has some basic needs. They need to feel significant. They need to feel important.
But you talk about Moses.
They need to feel special. Absolutely.
You talk about Bible people.
That is my perspective and my convictions. I don't impose that on anybody.
So can one succeed without that?
What set me free is what I recommend to people. If they accept it, they can use it, fine. I discovered that
to accept that, you have to be a Christian. If I'm in Saudi Arabia, where it's illegal to be a Christian, and I like your books, and I want to be part like Dr. Monroe,
yes.
Do I have to be a Christian? Can I be a Muslim and still be like Dr.
I wouldn't say to be a Christian. I would say to be someone who studied the principles laid down in that book called the Bible. That's my conviction. But I don't impose on anybody. Every human watching this program got to make their own decisions. I love every human being, whether they are Buddhists, Muslims, or Hindus, or Confucians, or atheists. See, my perspective is this: before you are any of those things, you are a human. And that gives you dignity. That gives you the value of being the image of God. That makes you important to me. So I don't want to deal with the label first. I want to deal with the essence of the human first. And then the label can be discussed after we talk about yourself as a human. 7 billion people on earth today, and each one of them are made in the image of God. And their convictions come after that. So that's what I speak to. I speak to the human factor. I believe that every human being has the same value.
So every human being can succeed?
Absolutely.
The 7 billion people on earth.
Everyone was born to succeed. Absolutely.
Everyone was born to succeed?
They were born to succeed.
So who was going to serve whom?
Well, let me just say this. And it's a good question. When I tell people that everybody was born to be a leader, the first question that comes to their mind is, if everybody is a leader, who's going to follow? The very question indicates to me that there's a defect in your cultural upbringing and your brainwashing. Because we believe that leadership has to do with leading people. My perspective is different. I believe that every person was born to be a leader, but in an area of gifting. And it's that gift that you serve to the world that attracts people to you. Let me give an example of that. I am demanded all over the world. I have over 897 invitations for this 1 year to travel around the world to speak to millions of people. I still live on an island 7 miles wide in the same place where I slept on the floor. You know, I live on that same island. So I didn't leave to go to America to become great. I still live in that little island in the Caribbean, and I'm affecting 1.2 billion people every week. Why? They come after my gift. I was invited to to Ghana because of my gift, not because of my personality. Your gift is what makes you important to this program, not you as a person. So everybody watching the program has a gift. The problem is our culture suffocates our gifts. It begins even with our parents. What did your parent tell you? Son, I want you to go to school to get an education so you can get a job. I don't tell my kids that. I tell my kids, I want you to discover who you are, pursue with all your might, and become an asset to the world, whatever that passion is. My son and daughter today, age 27 and 28, my daughter is one of the leading administrators in my company. My son is 28 years old. He's director of our investment companies at age 28. Why? I train them to believe that they can do anything.
Well, you asked the question why, and I could answer why, because they are Dr. Monroe's children.
No, because...
Dr. Monroe is a very rich man.
No, it's not. It's not wealth. There are many rich people today whose kids are on drugs.
Yes, that's true.
So it is not the environment, it is what you instill in those children. Remember, I was born poor. I was born with no hope, but I had to re-educate myself. And I'm saying to everyone watching this program, and that's why I'm here in Ghana today, some of the greatest people I've ever met are people from Ghana. all over the world, some of them in my country. And I'm saying to them, look, use your gifts to build your country. I'm going to leave you with a quote I think will help you.
Yes.
There was an argument between a few people who were part of an organization. And the argument was about who is the greatest among them, who's going to be the leader. And they began to fuss about that. Their leader began to speak, and he said to them, why do you argue who's going to be the greatest? And then he made this statement. He said, whoever wants to be the greatest must become the servant of all the others. Whoever wants to be the first must become the slave. And what he meant by that was, if you want to be great, serve your gift to everybody else. Whoever serves his gift to the whole world will become great, because the world will not come to you for you. They come to you for your gift. And this is why we love so many of the leaders in our countries here in Africa who have made us proud. Mr. Nelson Mandela gave us a gift. You know, Mahatma Gandhi gave us a gift. These were gifts that they served themselves to the world. Stop looking for money and start looking for service. Stop looking for power. Start looking for service. Stop looking for profit. Start looking for service. If you serve well, people will actually call you a leader. Here's my definition. Leadership is the capacity to influence others through inspiration, motivated by a vision, generated by a passion, produced by a purpose. In other words, you find a purpose, it gives you a passion. You find a passion, it gives you a vision. You give you a vision, you get a conviction. You have a conviction, it'll give you the inspiration to inspire other people. Once you inspire people, they'll follow you. If you can't inspire people, you got to manipulate them. Once you manipulate a person, you're no longer a leader. So true leaders don't manipulate, they inspire. And that's what we need in Africa right now.
Let me do the last batch of text messages. And be thinking about this, Doc. If you would like to do an a cappella of It's Our Time, I'll be delighted there. But let's see what Ivan says that, whoa, what an education about Abraham Lincoln. This man has greatness thrust on him. Thank you very much, Dr. Monroe. Eugene says, did I hear someone say, match our MPs and ministers? I think spending their entire lives with Dr. Monroe would be a solution. Well, okay. Kofi says that, can you please tell him not to keep so long in coming to Ghana again? Doctor, can you therefore make a promise that you will come to Ghana every 5 years? Another one says, don't match only the president and the MPs to this show, but also the pastors, because the idea of trying to become who they are already have become in Christ, something like that, is discouraging. He's worried about the pastors in Ghana. Dr. MPs to this show, but also the pastors, because the idea of trying to become who they are already have become in Christ, something like that, is discouraging. He's worried about the pastors in Ghana. Dr. Monroe is really a motivational speaker. I want him to become their agents, but he wants to set up his own as an entrepreneur. He wants money.
You know, I think it's important for us, especially in Ghana right now, where the vultures are gathering. I could feel the vultures gathering around Ghana.
Around the oil.
Because you've discovered a resource, yes. And I think this is the most dangerous moment for Ghana. This is when you need right leadership in the country. Leaders that are more concerned about protecting the people than they are about lining their own pockets. We need leaders that are going to look out for the welfare of the unborn Ghanaian right now. Think about the 5 generations from now. The leaders today, with the vultures gathering, must think about the unborn children. Because every business deal, every contract, every agreement that you make right now has to be weighed against those unborn children. Don't just look at the present. Investors come to make a profit. That's all they want. They're not concerned about your life, about your children, about your infrastructure. They come to make a profit. You got to look out for your own people, your own welfare. And these young people, like the one who just wrote, they got great gifts, great talent. They got tremendous ideas. The government must put in place and facilitate opportunities for those young Ghanaians to begin to become entrepreneurs, to invest in their own country, and make sure that the foreign investor is not the only one that benefits from your resources. It belongs to you. God gave Ghana the responsibility for being stewards of the oil and the cocoa and the good soil that you have. I encourage every Ghanaian rather, especially those who are decision makers, to think carefully as you go to bed tonight. Think, what must I do to protect the treasures for our unborn children, to make sure that we don't fall into a trap like Solomon the king says. Two things Solomon said I want to remind you of. Number one, he said, woe to the land when a slave becomes king. And two, he says, he that doesn't work his own land will become a slave to them who own it. That means the Ghanaian must take responsibility to make sure that the foreigners do not own your own resources. They can benefit from it, they can help you progress, but they must never own it. Because if they own it, your children then become a slave to them. I encourage you as leaders to take responsibility and protect the unborn children.